She thought her kindness was a waste, till the last day. In a quiet village surrounded by green hills, there lived a young woman named Miriam. Her home was a small cottage at the edge of the path that led to the marketplace. Outside her cottage was a small wooden fence, and inside it, a garden. But this was no ordinary garden. Everywhere else in the village, gardens were full of life. Roses in bloom, bright marigolds, rows of vegetables that swayed in the summer breeze. But Miriam's garden was different. It was full of withered stems, brown leaves, and flowers that had long since died. Most of them had been there when she moved into the cottage years ago, planted by the previous owner who had passed away. The villagers would pass by and shake their heads. Why does she keep those old dead plants? She could dig them up and grow something beautiful. She's wasting her time. But every morning, Miriam would come out with her clay pitcher, fill it from the well, and water them anyway. When asked why she watered them, Miriam would only smile. My grandmother taught me that nothing is truly gone until God says so, she'd say. Even the driest ground can bloom again. But inside, she sometimes wondered if her grandmother had been wrong. Season after season passed and nothing grew, not a single bud, not a single leaf. Still, she kept watering. It had become part of her life. Wake, pray, draw water, and tend the garden of dead flowers. One autumn morning, a traveler came to the village. He was dusty from the road, with tired eyes and a heavy pack. He stopped in front of Miriam's fence and watched her pouring water over the brittle stems. "You're wasting your time," he said softly. Miriam smiled faintly. "Maybe, but I'd rather waste water than give up hope." The traveler tilted his head. "Hope for what? These flowers are gone, maybe," Miriam said again. "But I serve a God who brings life out of death." The traveler gave her a long look, not unkind, but puzzled, and went on his way. That winter was harsher than any the village had seen in years. Snow piled high against the fences, and the wind bit at the skin like needles. Miriam's roof leaked in 2 places, and her firewood ran low. Each morning, she broke the ice at the well and carried water to her garden. The villagers shook their heads even more now. One neighbor finally asked her, "Miriam, why do you still water them in the snow? Even God lets some things go." That night, as she sat by her small fire, Miriam thought about those words. Maybe it was time to stop. Maybe her kindness really was a waste. But in the stillness, she remembered a verse from her childhood. "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Galatians 6-9. She whispered it aloud, the words barely warming the air. And the next morning, she carried water again. Years passed, seasons changed. The flowers remained dead. Miriam grew older, her hair threaded with silver. Some mornings, she wondered if she was a fool. But she kept watering them, not because she believed they would bloom, that hope had almost faded, but because tending them felt like obedience to something greater than her own reasoning. One spring, news came that a great storm was moving toward the village. The clouds on the horizon were darker than any the people had seen. The wind smelled of rain and danger. The villagers prepared boarding windows, storing food, tying down roofs. Miriam filled her water pitcher and stood at her garden gate. "Don't waste your strength," the neighbor called. "This storm will destroy everything." But Miriam went out anyway, pouring water over the dead flowers one more time. That night, the storm broke. Rain hammered the earth without rest, and the wind howled like a living thing. Trees fell. Roofs lifted. The river swelled over its banks and rushed through the fields. Miriam's small cottage shook but held. When the morning came, the village was nearly unrecognizable. Branches scattered, fences broken, mud everywhere. Miriam stepped outside, expecting to see her garden washed away. But she froze at the gate. In the place of brittle stems and dry leaves were green shoots. Everywhere. The soil was dark and rich, the air thick with the scent of earth after rain. And here and there, impossibly, were buds. Fresh buds. It was as if the years of watering had prepared the soil for this moment, and the storm had awakened something hidden deep within. The villagers came to see. They stood in silence, staring at the garden that had been dead for years. Some whispered, "It's a miracle." Others just looked at Miriam with wide eyes. The next day, the buds began to open. Not 1 or 2, but dozens. Bright colors spilled across the garden: reds, yellows, purples, white. It was the most beautiful garden the village had ever seen. And then came the stranger. The same traveler who had passed by years ago. His hair was grayer now, but his eyes still sharp. He stopped at the fence, stunned. "I thought they were gone," he said. "They were," Miriam replied, smiling. "Until God said they weren't." That afternoon, Miriam gathered the villagers. She told them the truth that for years she had doubted. But God had taught her that kindness and faithfulness are never wasted, even when we see no results. "Sometimes," she said, "God hides life where we see only death, so that when it blooms, we know it was His doing and not ours." She quoted again the verse that had carried her through. "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." The flowers did more than just make the garden beautiful. Bees came in swarms, and soon the village's crops began to thrive again. Children played in the garden paths. Travelers stopped to rest in the shade, and some stayed to hear about the God Miriam served. Her little garden became a place where weary people came to remember that not all dead things stay dead. Years later, Miriam grew frail. One spring morning, she sat at her garden gate, pitcher in hand. The flowers were in full bloom, swaying gently in the breeze. A young girl from the village came to sit beside her. "Why do you still water them? They're already alive?" Miriam smiled. "Because life still needs tending. Because I remember what it was like when they weren't." That night, Miriam passed quietly in her sleep. The villagers continued to care for her garden. Each year it bloomed more beautifully than the last. And whenever a stranger asked why, they told the story of the woman who watered dead flowers. Some people came away shaking their heads, but others walked away with something they didn't have before: hope. Miriam's story is more than a tale about flowers. It's about the kind of faith that keeps showing kindness, even when it looks like nothing will change. You may be watering something in your life right now, a relationship, a prayer, a dream, a calling, and it feels dead. But God can bring life out of places you thought were gone forever, the Apostle Paul wrote. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. 1 Corinthians 15:58. Faithfulness often looks foolish in the eyes of the world. But when God moves, every drop you poured, every prayer you whispered, every act of kindness you gave will prove it was never wasted.